I was pronounced dead for 4 minutes and 38 seconds. Not almost dead. Not close. Dead. My heart had stopped. My breathing was gone. Someone wrote the time down. I know because I saw it later. That part matters to doctors. What mattered to me came after. My name is Alan Gonram. I'm 34 years old. I didn't believe in near-death stories before this. I didn't hate them. I just filed them away as something people said when they needed meaning. I thought the brain did strange things under pressure. Chemicals, fear, memory misfiring. That was enough of an explanation for me. When I came back, I wasn't crying because I was relieved to be alive. I was crying because something followed me back. There was a moment, right before everything went quiet, where I realized I wasn't afraid. That scared me more than the pain. Fear just shut off, like a switch. And in that space where fear should have been, there was a clarity I wasn't ready for. I didn't see my life flash before my eyes. I didn't see heaven or fire or people waving at me. What I experienced felt structured, intentional, like I had stepped into something already in progress. The hardest part to explain is this. Nothing felt symbolic at the time. It felt literal, solid, real in a way this world suddenly doesn't. When I woke up in the hospital, I kept trying to sit up. I kept asking where it was. No one knew what I meant. My throat hurt. My chest felt like it had been crushed inward. A nurse kept telling me to calm down. I couldn't explain that I wasn't panicking. I was grieving, because something showed me what was coming. Not events, not disasters. Something quieter, something closer. And whatever it was, I knew instantly that most people, including the people who talk the most about God, weren't ready for it. Before that day, my life was unremarkable in the best and worst ways. I worked a job I didn't hate and didn't love. I paid my bills on time. I went to the gym when I felt guilty enough. I called my parents every couple of weeks. Nothing dramatic. Nothing broken. I grew up around church, but never stayed close to it. Sundays were routine. Stand, sit, sing, repeat. As an adult, I stopped going and no one chased me. That felt honest. I didn't feel like I was rejecting anything. I just didn't feel the need to pretend certainty. If you asked me what I believed, I would have said I believed in being decent. Don't lie if you don't have to. Help people when it's convenient. Stay out of trouble. I thought that was enough. I thought morality was mostly about behavior. I didn't think much about death. It felt distant, like something scheduled far into the future. I assumed I'd have warning. A diagnosis. A slow decline. Time to adjust to the idea. That morning started normally. I woke up late. Skipped breakfast. Answered emails while standing in the kitchen. The weather was clear. No bad feeling. No sense that anything was off. I remember thinking about something small and stupid. A comment someone had made online that annoyed me. I was replaying it in my head, imagining a better response I'd never sent. That's what I was focused on. Not my heart. Not my breathing. Not the fact that my body was about to fail without permission. There was no voice telling me to slow down. No intuition. No warning sign that felt meaningful in hindsight. Just a regular day stacked on top of thousands of other regular days. That's important to say out loud. Nothing in my life felt like it was building toward a moment like this. I wasn't searching. I wasn't desperate. I wasn't asking questions that needed answers. Which is why what happened next felt less like an experience I triggered, and more like something I stumbled into without consent. It happened fast enough that my brain didn't have time to dramatize it. 1 second I was standing in the kitchen. The next, my vision narrowed like someone was slowly turning down a dimmer switch. There was pressure in my chest, but it wasn't sharp. It felt heavy, dense, like gravity had suddenly doubled inside my body. I remember leaning against the counter, thinking maybe I stood up too quickly. Then my legs stopped cooperating. I didn't fall the way people do in movies. There was no reaching out, no slow collapse. My body just gave up its structure. I hit the floor hard enough to knock the air out of me, but I don't remember the sound. What I remember is the silence. Not quiet. Silence. Total absence. Like the background noise of reality had been muted. I tried to inhale, and nothing happened. No panic yet. Just confusion. My chest wasn't responding. My mouth was open, but there was no movement behind it. That's when fear tried to show up, and didn't fully make it. My thoughts became very simple. This is wrong. This shouldn't be happening. I saw the ceiling at an angle I'd never seen before. A small crack I hadn't noticed. Dust in the corner. Details sharpened instead of fading. Then there was a moment where my body felt very far away. Not numb. Distant. Like it belonged to someone else, and I was just borrowing the view. The last physical sensation I remember was a faint vibration in my chest. Not pain. Not relief. Just movement without purpose. After that, there was no blackness. No tunnel. No light pulling me forward. There was a clean break. Like a cord being unplugged. And suddenly, I was somewhere else, aware, intact, and unmistakably alive in a way I didn't recognize as human anymore. I became aware before I understood where I was. Awareness came first. Not sight. Not sound. Just the fact that I existed and that nothing hurt anymore. Then I realized I was looking at myself. Not from above like a camera. Not floating near the ceiling. I was offset, slightly behind and to the side, as if I were standing where another person might stand if they were watching quietly. My body was on the kitchen floor, twisted wrong, one arm pinned under my chest. My face looked unfamiliar, pale in a way that didn't look human. I noticed how still it was. That detail felt important. I didn't feel attached to it. That surprised me more than anything else. There was no panic about leaving it behind. No urge to return. No sense that something had gone terribly wrong. It felt finished. Like a task completed, not abandoned. Time behaved strangely. I could focus on everything at once or narrow in on a single detail without effort. The crack in the ceiling. The way my shirt had folded under my shoulder. The hum of the refrigerator, still running like nothing had changed. I was aware of movement outside the apartment. A neighbor. A car passing. All of it registered without sound, like information rather than experience. I didn't feel invisible. I felt irrelevant. That sounds harsh, but it wasn't. It was neutral. My body was an object now. Useful to someone else, maybe. No longer central to me. Then the space around me shifted, not visually, but structurally. Like the rules governing distance had been relaxed. The room felt thinner, less fixed. Something was approaching. Not physically. Not walking through the door. Approaching in the same way a thought approaches before you're aware you're thinking it. There was no fear response. My mind didn't brace itself. It felt expected, even though I had no memory of expecting anything. I didn't turn toward it. I didn't need to. I could feel it clearly without looking. The presence didn't announce itself. It didn't speak. It didn't glow. It simply arrived, and the environment adjusted around it as if that was the correct order of things. I became very aware of myself in its proximity. Not judged. Not examined. Known. That's the only word that fits. It wasn't looking at me the way people look at each other. There was no focus point. No eyes. And yet there was complete attention. Undivided. Total. The calm it carried wasn't soothing in a comforting way. It was stabilizing. Like standing on solid ground after realizing you've been walking on something thin your entire life. I tried to form a thought to ask what it was. Before the thought finished, I understood that the question didn't apply. There was no sense of hierarchy, but there was difference. Not greater and lesser. More like permanent and temporary. I felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with guilt. Everything about me was present at once. Every motive behind every action. Not just what I did, but why I did it. The shortcuts. The small justifications. The parts one never said out loud because they sounded fine in my head. Nothing was pointed out. Nothing was highlighted. That was worse. I realized I had spent my entire life curating a version of myself even I believed. And that version wasn't false. It was just incomplete. The presence didn't react to that realization. It didn't confirm or deny it. It simply remained. Then the space shifted again, and understanding replaced curiosity. This wasn't a meeting. It was a transition, and I wasn't in control of which direction it went. I had always believed that belief itself was the dividing line. That faith separated people. That certainty was rewarded. Doubt was punished. That the right words, the right labels, the right alignment mattered most. That idea fell apart instantly. Not through argument. Through exposure. I saw belief the way you see clothing after realizing you've been naked the whole time. Useful in certain environments. Meaningless in others. What mattered wasn't what I said I believed. It wasn't what group I identified with or what traditions I respected. None of that carried weight here. What mattered was alignment. Not moral alignment. Not ideological alignment. Direction. I understood that my life had a direction even when I wasn't choosing one. Neutral wasn't neutral. Passive wasn't still. Everything moved somewhere. I saw moments I dismissed as insignificant. Conversations cut short. Help avoided because it was inconvenient. Silence chosen to protect comfort. Not crimes. Not sins. Just directionally consistent decisions. They added up. Not into punishment. Into shape. I understood then that people don't arrive anywhere suddenly. They drift. Slowly. Quietly. Confidently wrong. This wasn't shown to scare me. There was no threat attached. No warning label. It was shown because I was still close enough to change direction. That realization came with pressure, not external, but internal. Like becoming aware you're holding your breath without realizing it. I sensed that many people confuse familiarity with safety, especially people who speak confidently about truth. The presence didn't say this. I knew it. And somehow, that knowledge felt heavier than fear ever had. The space opened without moving. One moment, there was nothing distinct. The next, there was distance. Width. Direction. I was aware of two paths without seeing myself standing at a starting point. There was no sign that said choose. No voice explaining consequences. The paths existed the way facts exist, independently of opinion. One path felt narrow, but not tight. It wasn't dark. It wasn't bright. It was defined, like a road worn down by use, not by crowds, but by consistency. I sensed effort there, not suffering. Attention. Presence. Wait. The other path was wide, easy to enter, smooth in a way that felt deliberate. It curved gently, just enough that you couldn't see very far ahead. It didn't feel dangerous. It felt accommodating. What unsettled me was how familiar the wide path felt. It carried the emotional texture of my life. Comfort, distraction, mild concern followed by relief. The feeling of always having time later. The narrow path didn't promise anything. No reward attached to it. No assurance that it led somewhere better. Just a sense of honesty. Of things being faced instead of managed. I wasn't told which one was correct. I wasn't told one led to life and the other to loss. I understood instead that choice wasn't about destination. It was about what kind of awareness you were willing to live with. I felt that I had already been moving on one of them long before my body failed. Not consciously, not deliberately, just by default. That realization carried a quiet grief. Not regret, recognition. Then the vision shifted again before I could linger on it. There was no chance to ask questions. The paths faded, but the feeling of having been seen in a decision I didn't remember making stayed with me. I found myself in a place that felt warm immediately. Not physically warm, emotionally. Safe. Familiar. Like returning to something that had always been there. There were structures. Clean. Orderly. Comfortable. Nothing threatening. Everything arranged to reduce friction. Movement without resistance. I sensed people there without focusing on individuals. A collective presence. Calm. Agreement. Reassurance flowing between them like a shared language. This place felt convincing. That's what disturbed me. There was no pain. No conflict. No urgency. Everything operated on a loop that never demanded anything deeper. No sharp edges. No questions that lingered too long. I understood that many people would choose this willingly. That many already had. It felt like rest without restoration. Like relief without healing. I noticed something missing, not visually, but relationally. Nothing here required response. Nothing pressed back when you touched it. It was interaction without consequence. Safety without intimacy. I realized then that comfort can exist without connection. That you can feel okay while slowly becoming less present. No one here seemed lost. But no one seemed fully there either. This wasn't punishment. That was the unsettling part. It wasn't a trap. It was an offering. One that asked very little and gave just enough. I sensed how easy it would be to stay. To settle. To let awareness soften into something dull but pleasant. Then, without warning, the warmth thinned. Not disappeared. Just lost its grip. And I knew this place wasn't false because it was cruel. It was false because it was incomplete. The final vision didn't arrive like the others. It didn't surround me. It didn't place me anywhere new. It turned inward. I saw versions of myself layered over each other. Not images. States. The person I presented. The person I believed I was. The person revealed under pressure. They didn't match. The outer version was competent, reasonable, mostly kind, socially acceptable, the kind of person people describe as good enough. The inner truth wasn't darker. It was quieter, less defended. I saw how often I avoided depth by staying articulate, how I used logic to distance myself from discomfort, how often I chose being right over being present. None of that looked dramatic. That was the point. I understood that outer alignment can look perfect while inner direction drifts slowly off course. That you can say the right things, believe the right concepts, and still be moving away from what matters. What mattered wasn't intensity. It was attention. Not what I felt strongly about, but what I consistently made space for. I sensed how easy it is to confuse noise with conviction. How institutions, routines, and shared language can give the appearance of depth without requiring transformation. This wasn't about religion. It was about honesty. The vision didn't accuse me. It clarified me. And as it settled, I felt something new enter the space. Not a presence this time. A pull. Not forward. Back. The pull didn't feel rushed, but it was firm. Like a tide that doesn't argue with the shore. I understood that I couldn't stay suspended in awareness much longer. Not because of punishment, because timing mattered. Time there wasn't counted. It was felt as pressure. Like being aware that something essential was narrowing, not closing, but asking for a response. I sensed how fragile the window was. Not just for me, for everyone still alive and assuming there would always be more space later. More chances to pay attention. More opportunities to turn inward. What struck me wasn't fear of an ending. It was how much people underestimate how quickly direction becomes momentum. No one was running out of days in a dramatic way. It wasn't about disaster. It was about drift accelerating quietly until stopping felt unnatural. I felt the weight of delay. How postponement feels harmless while it's happening. How later slowly becomes a position instead of a plan. There was no message like repent or prepare. Nothing theatrical. Just the awareness that responsiveness dulls faster than people think. That once you stop noticing the difference between comfort and truth, you don't feel the loss immediately. You feel it when it's almost complete. The urgency wasn't loud. That made it more serious. I sensed that many people mistake reassurance for readiness. That being told you're fine can slowly replace the need to be honest with yourself. I understood that whatever was coming didn't need fear to enforce it. It needed an attention, and that realization came with a final tightening, like a decision being made without words. The pull strengthened, and I resisted it for the first time. I didn't want to go back, not because the body hurt, not because the visions were overwhelming, but because returning felt like forgetting something important too quickly. The re-entry wasn't gentle. Awareness compressed. The clarity I'd been standing in folded inward fast, like trying to remember a dream while waking up too quickly. I felt weight again. Density. Resistance. My chest burned as if air were suddenly abrasive. My heart restarted with violence, not rhythm. Pain rushed in all at once. Sharp. Disorganized. Loud. I heard voices, but they sounded distant, like through water. Hands pressed into my chest. A command to breathe that felt impossible to follow. I gasped involuntarily. My body reacted before I decided to participate. That bothered me more than the pain. I opened my eyes, and the world felt flat. Smaller. Like going from a wide landscape to a narrow hallway. Tears came without emotion attached. My face reacted before my mind caught up. I kept trying to say something, but language felt inadequate. Heavy. Wrong for what I had just experienced. Someone told me I was lucky. I didn't respond. Luck had nothing to do with it. As the room stabilized, the urgency faded. Not gone, but dulled. Like a memory you can feel slipping even while you're holding it. That frightened me more than dying had. Because I realized how easy it would be to return to normal. And how much effort it would take not to. I don't tell this story to convince anyone of anything. I still don't have language for most of it. I don't claim understanding. I only know what stayed with me after everything else faded. Life feels thinner now, not less meaningful, more exposed. Distractions stand out. Noise feels heavier. Comfort reveals its limits quickly. I don't trust my own certainty the way I used to. That feels like progress. What unsettles me most isn't fear of death. It's how easily people mistake stability for depth. How often we settle into patterns that feel safe without ever asking where they're taking us. I still go to work. I still pay bills. I still laugh at things that don't matter. I'm not detached from life. I'm more inside it. I notice what I avoid. I notice when I feel silence instead of listening to it. I notice how often I reach for reassurance instead of truth. I don't think everyone needs an experience like mine. I think most people already know, quietly, that something matters more than what they're giving their attention to. I didn't come back with answers. I came back with a sensitivity I didn't ask for and can't turn off. If any of this feels familiar, not dramatic, not spiritual, just quietly uncomfortable, that might be the point. Not fear, recognition. Because what I learned is simple and harder than it sounds. Direction is happening whether you choose it or not. And noticing that fact might be the most